I've been on here a bit lately since my wife and I started fighting last month. We have known each other for about 13 years, dated for around 5 and have been married for 3. Over New Year's I went on a personal trip to see my mother, who I rarely see as I live across country from her. As it was business, I had very little time to call and talk to my wife, and had a few drinks as I was going to have to deal with my family. I came home from the weekend, and she picks me up from the airport, listening to music that I love, but has never been fond of as far as I knew. Tripped a flag, but I let it go. We get home and the rest of the day is going great. She's upset that I drank and talked to her very little, but I don't think that it's anything too serious. Later that night I get up for a glass of water, and she's sitting on the couch, lean in for a kiss, and see a few messages arrive on her phone from Facebook. I don't read them as we have had issues in the past, with my insecurities stemming from my roommate catching her in an internet relationship. She says nothing happened. I moved on as best as I could, salvaging as much of our relationship as I could, and then I caught her about 6 months after that, with another person from our past texting and flirting. Then she flew cross-country to spend a weekend with him, lying to me, telling me that she went to a college friend's house in a different part of the country. I chose to let it go and salvage my relationship with her, and we moved on. So, while I didn't read the message, I caught the name on the top, and at that point she noticed that she had messages, and she furtively turned her phone upside down to hide it from me. I asked her who he was and why he was on a hide the phone from me status. She tells me it's a mutual acquaintance from our past, but that it's nothing. Another flag goes up, but I don't want to start this fight and let it go. Next day we are lying in bed trying to fall asleep. She has her iPad out playing games, and every few minutes she would angle the screen away from me, and type a bit, then go back to her game normally. Something here is starting to ring bells. Almost like she is hiding more from me than I thought before. So, I wait until she goes to work the next morning, as she works weekends and I don't, and I open up her iPad to Facebook. I know this is creepy of me, but track history being what it is, I felt justified. I open her Facebook app, as she has never logged out of Facebook for the last 2 years as far as I know. Only to be faced with username and password. Big flag flying now. Why would she log out of Facebook if she isn't hiding anything on Facebook? So I log her in. Not as creepy as it sounds. For the most part, usernames and passwords are generally the same for all of our accounts for everything. Boom, I'm in. Let's see what her and this guy have been talking about. I open it and scroll back a few conversations and see him asking her to move across country to be with him, and her telling him that she cannot for at least 6 months as she has a commitment at work. A commitment at work is the only thing that is keeping her from leaving me, according to this conversation. Nothing about me, or us, or the fact that 1 week prior we were talking about having kids together, and starting the next chapter in our lives. I notice that she has had this conversation with this person, and I notice another conversation with another guy. But I didn't recognize the name, so I didn't look through it. She comes home from work. I ask her if everything is okay with us. Are there any complaints? Or anything that she wants to talk to me about? She says no, that nothing is the matter and that everything is peachy. I ask her then why is she telling this other guy that she's unhappy and ready to move but can't because of work. She gets defensive and then flips it all back on my breaching her privacy. I understand that I did, and how that now she really is unhappy about some things, but that she doesn't have time to talk about it, as she is leaving for an appointment. She leaves and I stew for about an hour, and open her iPad back up. Can't control myself at this point, as we didn't actually talk or clear anything up. And I'm losing the last 5 years of my life all over again, for the 3rd time. I open up her Facebook and go to messages only to find that the first guy's messages are gone, as well as the second guy's. I'm concerned now about what was in that conversation, if it wasn't innocent enough to not delete. She gets home and I try to sit her down and talk about all this again, and she makes the entire conversation about how I am being too controlling and violating her privacy. And that it sounds like I am accusing her out of guilt from my business trip spent the entire time with my mother, when I wasn't working, so, no, not guilt. Fast forward a few days and I have to leave for work. Not a business trip but a trip to the ocean as I'm Navy. She is very distant until I leave and we don't really talk about much, and she won't even fight with me, telling me to go away and that she needs space. I go on my trip, and we used to talk daily via email, but I get assured I'm running out the door, I'll email later, and then nothing for the rest of the week. I'm hurt at this point and really have no idea if I'm even going to have a wife at home when I get there. She is there when I get home to my surprise. But I notice that her phone and iPad now have the security lock on, and I check to be sure, and her laptop is also locked. And the sheets on our bed are in the wash, something she hasn't done in years. This is also the first night that she starts sleeping in her craft room on the couch. We get into a fight about her not talking to me the week I was gone, and that she isn't talking to me now that I was back. I bring up how it really is making it hard to develop any trust back in her if she locks everything. She starts towing things like her job requires her to safeguard information, and that she can't trust me to not look into her phone, that she has to have it locked. I can understand this, I guess, but it still bugs me. I watch her get text messages all day, and she hide her phone when she responds them so that I can't even see the phone. I know she's hiding it and say something to her. She of course gets mad and yells at me for trying to snoop. I get mad and tell her that I wouldn't have to if she was open. I tell her that if her conversation with people was so innocent, that she could go a long way by just showing me. She refuses and throws the safeguarding information back at me. Again, I'm the bad guy for trying to look through her phone. I walk into her room that night to tell her good night as she has decided to not sleep in the bed with me, and as I walk in, she furtively shuts her laptop like I just walked in on her looking at something she wasn't supposed to be. Flags up everywhere. So, moving on to this week, I've slowly gotten her to kind of start talking to me. We even have a civil lunch together, and we have an almost less than destructive conversation, where she tells me that she doesn't know if she can ever trust me around her phone and stuff again, and that it is a deal breaker for her. Meanwhile, I'm trying to forget the jealousy and hurt that I feel, so that I can once again salvage my relationship with her. I promise her that I will never go through her phone and stuff again, as I just miss being around her and want to be with her. Then tonight, she comes home from work, 1 hour late. I've ordered food and it's getting cold. She has a likely excuse and I don't write her about it. When she pulls into the driveway, I go to help her in, and as I walk up to the car she's on her phone. I walk up to the door to open it and see the name on the top of the text message screen, and it's, you guessed it, the guy that started all this arguing in the first place. I lose it, and tell her that she has to show me. She doesn't have to worry about safeguarding information as she can open up the text message and watch to make sure I don't go anywhere else. She tells me I just broke my promise to her to not go through her things, and I tell her it was accidental, and that I feel that the betrayal that I'm feeling feels worse than hers. And this is the point that she grabs her stuff for the night and leaves the house. I feel that she has done this to me over and over, and that I cannot continue to keep getting torn apart by her. But I still love her more than ever. However, I feel that I cannot move on without knowing the conversations that she is having, and having full disclosure. I doubt that she is coming back to me now as she did this to her ex before me. I am curious as to what you fine people think of my situation, and if I was anywhere close to handling it right. I do love this woman, but that just makes it all the harder. I know there are many places in this where I was to blame. I just wish I had some hard evidence of her cheating on me to make it easy to leave. My wife has cheated on me in the past and I think she is again. But don't know if it's just a problem with me. Any advice would be helpful. And I can elaborate on almost everything as I feel I barely skimmed the surface of our whole relationship.